Okay, great. I think we'll kick off. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. We really appreciate you making the time. My name is Peter Colenso, and it's my privilege to be chair of the Board of Trustees of PEAS. We're going to, over the course of the next 30-45 minutes, talk about PEAS's work over the last 18 months during COVID, and to the degree that it's possible to talk of post-COVID, coming out of COVID as well. We've got three speakers. First, we're going to have Laura, our CEO, followed by Beatrice, our country director for Zambia, and then Henry from PEAS Uganda. We're going to have three short presentations in sequence, and then I'll open it up for discussion and questions at the end of the three speakers. If during that time you want to put any questions in the chat function, do please do so. When they're not presenting, perhaps Laura, Beatrice and Henry can try to respond to those questions, or indeed anyone else on the PEAS team. And then if we haven't reached those questions by the end of the presentations, we can bring them back to the Q&A at the end. So that's the structure for today, and thanks again for your participation. One other, just a sort of broad framing before I hand over to Laura. It's quite an extraordinary time for international education, indeed education in any country. As you all know, the impact of COVID has been really, it's been an event without historical precedent. We've had over 180 countries with school closures, over 1.6 billion children out of school. Many of you will know that the country with the longest period of children out of school was Uganda, where we have 30 schools, the largest part of our network. So it would be really interesting today to hear from all of our team about how PEAS has responded to that situation. And it's a situation that is by no means getting easier. In addition to COVID and the economic and fiscal consequences for governments, funding and operation, we know that we've got additional pressures on governments and countries currently following the war in Ukraine. We've got severe pressures coming from hikes in food and fuel prices. We've got high inflation. All of that is affecting the very low income communities also that PEAS works with in rural areas of Zambia and Uganda, both directly in our broader system strengthening works with government. So it's a really, really challenging time. And our three speakers today will talk a bit about how we've been coping as an organisation, what we've done and how we will focus going forward. So thank you again for that. And without further ado, I will hand over to our fabulous CEO, Laura. Laura, over to you.
Thanks very much, Peter, and thank you very much for joining us today. So I'm really happy to share that PEAS is in a very strong position and delivering with real momentum at the moment, and that's despite the very challenging years behind us and also the challenges that Peter's just outlined. And there are three recent developments that I'm feeling particularly excited about at the organisation. The first is that we've got new external evidence that PEAS is really delivering for girls and doing so in a cost-effective manner. The second is that our school network is growing. We've launched 3 new secondary schools this year and have 4 more in the pipeline. And also, thirdly, we are reaching nearly 150,000 additional students through our government partner schools this year. So my job today is to share the findings of our external evaluation of our girls' work in Uganda. But before I dive into that, I just wanted to say a little bit about why I think secondary education is so important. Within 25 years, half of young people in the world are going to be African. And that's a huge opportunity for the continent. And I think that secondary education is key to unlocking the potential of all of those young people. In places where few people go to university, secondary education is the last formal stage of education before many young people jump off into the workforce or into parenting or participating in democracy. And at the individual level, every child who gets a great secondary education has more choices, more agency, and a better chance of living a healthier life, a wealthier life, and a safe life. And every time I visit a peace school in rural Uganda or Zambia, I really see that transformative power of secondary education. The last time I was out in Uganda, I was up in the Rwenzori Mountains, and I'm a history teacher by training, and so I love observing history lessons. And I saw the most outstanding history lesson delivered by a young trainee teacher in a peace school. And at the end of the lesson, I went to thank her for having me sit at the back of her classroom. And as we were chatting, she let me know that she herself had been a student in a peace school, and that she decided to train as a teacher because she wanted other girls to be inspired by her, the first person in her family ever to go to secondary school, and to show to the wider community that there are more choices for young girls other than early marriage and marriage. So moving on from that, my job today, as I said, was to share the findings of our external evaluation of PEA's girls-focused work in Uganda. So this evaluation looks specifically at a 4-year programme which we delivered as part of the UK government-funded Girls Education Challenge. And the headline findings from this evaluation were that PEA's girls learn more, they are more confident, and they are better equipped for life after school than girls educated in non-PEAS schools. And the evaluation also found that PEAS schools delivered these better outcomes very cost effectively, and that led to the evaluators calling PEAS interventions a smart buy. So there's lots of content in this evaluation report which can be accessed on our website. But there are 3 things from the report and from my subsequent discussions with the PEAS team in Uganda that I think are particularly relevant to share. So the first thing coming from the evaluation is that we have even more evidence now that better child protection, sorry, my light's just gone off, that better child protection leads to better learning outcomes. It seems very obvious that children need to feel safe to learn more. But in the context where we are working, violence and abuse is endemic in schools. And so the evaluation found that PEAS girls feel safer in their schools, and that PEAS schools are really raising the bar for child protection standards. And they're doing that through a stronger policy environment, better training for staff, and opportunities for girls and boys to learn about their rights. On the downside, though, the evaluation also found that PEAS girls don't always feel safe on the journey to school. So it's now a top priority for us to be working with our wider communities to change that. A second key finding from the evaluation is that strong female role models really make the difference. So in every PEAS school, there is a senior woman teacher, and it's their job to coordinate pastoral care for girls, to lead the girls' clubs and girls' activities, and to act as one of the child protection focal points. And this evaluation found that senior women teachers not only help girls feel safer in school and inspire them to stay in school, but they also have a radical impact on the girls' reading and writing skills. So one of the challenges we face now is how to recruit and retain female teachers. Last time I was in Uganda, I was speaking to one of our brilliant female school leaders, and she was telling me how difficult it is to keep great female teachers in school after they get married. She found that when female teachers get married, their husbands often find that the rural locations of the schools are not particularly dignified or safe environments for educated women. And one of the solutions that we found to this is that it's really effective is providing really high quality teacher housing, but it's still a problem that we're really grappling with across the network. And then the last point that I'm going to draw out from the evaluation regards PEA's response to the pandemic. So the timing of this 4-year programme and the evaluation meant that we were able to evaluate the pivot that PEA's made from educating children in schools to providing remote support during those extremely long school closures in Uganda. So our team had to work harder than ever to reach the students in rural communities, and they did that via telephone calls, SMS messages, at-home study packs and radio broadcasts, all of which were designed with a gender lens. And in general, the evaluation found that this remote support really helped girls and boys to stay connected and engaged in their education. And this programme had really contributed to the strong re-enrolment rates after the pandemic and the good exam results that we've seen after the pandemic. But there are two things that I really wanted to highlight about this remote response. The first is that nearly all of the students reported that the skills they'd gained in the Peas School before the pandemic, through the life skills programmes, the livelihoods programmes and the extracurricular activities that we offer, they found that those skills had really helped them adapt well to learning at home and had improved their resilience at a time of crisis. And for me, this just really reinforces the view that there's a lot more to education than just academics. And then secondly, and the last thing that I'll mention, and it's the thing that makes me so proud to be associated with Peas, the evaluation found that Peas was so effective at supporting students during this really difficult time because of the clear commitment and resilience of the Peas staff at both the school level and the central office level. So the evaluation found that our staff were really going the extra mile for the students. And this is just amazing external validation of what I feel really deeply. And that's that at Peas we have remarkable people and culture. And that makes the organisation really special, but it also translates directly into impact for children. So on that note, I'll pass back over to Peter.
Laura, thank you very much. I should also say it's great to have Laura back from maternity leave. Many of you will know that she has been on maternity leave and recently rejoined us. And during that period, Jenny was our acting CEO and did a fabulous job. We're going to move now on to Zambia, and I want to invite Beatrice to talk to the programme there. Beatrice has just joined us at Peas, and we're thrilled to have her on board running our Zambia operations. And she's from Western Province of Zambia and has worked for over 20 years for non-governmental organisations, but also worked very tightly with the government of Zambia over those years, and of course that working closely with the governments both in Zambia and Uganda is critical to what we're trying to achieve. So Beatrice, lovely to have you here, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter. I feel greatly honoured and privileged to join Peas. This is because as a female leader, I see Peas giving me the opportunity to be a role model to many girls in my country. So currently in Zambia, we have more need for secondary schools. So for every 10 primary schools, there's only one secondary school for children to continue their education. So in the past, these schools charged very high fees, and that made it difficult for many children to access education. So we are very excited that last year in 2021, the new government that we have in place in Zambia did away with school fees, and they introduced a free education policy, which now makes it easier for children to access primary and secondary school education for free. This is particularly for children that are, coming from low-income communities. Now they are able to go to school. So due to the strong partnership that Peas has with the government of the Republic of Zambia, we already started offering free education to day students in our schools. And by doing that, we're doing that at a very cheaper per pupil cost than government schools. So this was the first of its kind, and it has pioneered the way of national free secondary education in the country. So this wider adoption of this model has shown that Peas has potential to transform the way secondary education is being delivered in the country. However, there's still not enough secondary schools in the country. Like I said already, we have the government now that has introduced the free education policy. So what this means is that we now have a lot of children that are attending school, and this is already putting pressure on government to provide quality education. In the next 2 weeks, the government is going to employ about 30,000 teachers to try and match the enrollment that is there. But even then, that is really a drop in the ocean. The pupil teacher ratio is still very high. but that is a step in the right direction. So even where secondary education or secondary schools exist, generally the quality of education is very poor. And that's where we come in as Peace. We are expanding all our schools and opening new ones to provide that life-changing education to thousands of more girls and boys from marginalized communities. So I feel really greatly honored again to join Peace at this time when I think we are really experiencing so much growth. We've moved from one school in 2012, and now we have 5 schools, and the 6th school is on the way. We are currently reaching out to 2,400 students. 58% of our students are girls, and about half of them come from low-income families. So our students have continued to perform very well in their examinations. This is despite COVID-19. I think the previous speaker already talked about some of the strategies we put in place to ensure that our girls too and our boys too continue receiving education despite the COVID-19. In addition, we are still working closely with government to ensure that we support the delivery of better education by improving the way schools are managed. So we target school leadership just to improve the way the schools are run. So in the next 5 years, we have a very ambitious program as Peace. We want to continue growing. So we want to target about 5,400 learners at our Peace schools, and we're going to build at least 2 Peace secondary schools, and that will take us to a minimum of 7 schools. But that will also be coupled with expanding our existing schools to achieve this. We are ramping up our support to government schools to ensure long-term change that supports young people across Zambia, not just those in Peace schools. For now, it's not just about growing. We are constantly improving at what we do. It is our responsibility as Peace to ensure that we provide the education that the young people need so that they can have happy, healthy, and socially responsible lives. Key to this is also we want to ensure that we achieve greater academic results. We want to make our school environment safe for our learners, and also ensuring that we prepare them for life beyond secondary education. We'll continue to improve exam results in our schools and provide opportunities for them to develop key life skills and support our girls to achieve at the same level as our male students. So thank you very much. Back to Peter.
Beatrice, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And it's amazing to see the exam results and also the shift to working to strengthen the successful pilot with government schools as well. And actually, that's an area that Henry's going to particularly focus on, our work with broader government schools in Uganda. So Henry's our head of our Uganda office. He oversees almost 1,000 staff, if you include all the staff within the schools that we have, academic and non-academic. So Henry is really the heartbeat of this organisation's operation, and he has done an absolutely staggering job, particularly during the hardships of COVID. During that period, we expanded not only from dealing with our own schools, we co-convened 2 national level task forces on education with the government of Uganda. We set up a radio program for distance learning, which was the only one authorised by the government of Uganda, which I think, Henry can correct me, reached about 150,000 students during that time. And we expanded our system strengthening reports then and support then and subsequently to about 200 low-performing government secondary schools. So Henry's done an incredible job, and kudos to him and the team. Henry, let me hand over to you. Great to have you here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Peter, for the introductions, and good afternoon here from Kampala. I know it's good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. Henry is my name. Peter did the intro, and so I would just following on Peter's intro. It has been really a few challenging years until this year, when we are all excited that schools opened again in Uganda after the longest period in the world. And that really excited us, and students are back in school now. So predominantly for me, I'm going to really focus a lot talking to you about how we have scaled our support to improve education for tens and thousands of students outside the peace schools through collaborating with the government in Uganda, especially the Ministry of Education. Now, of course, this isn't a new area for us, but I think what is new is the scaling up scaling up of the program. And before diving into the details of the program, I would like to paint a picture of what is happening in Uganda, especially in the government schools around the students. So post-COVID, we have seen that ever before, there have been more students enrolled in our schools, in the government secondary schools or in secondary schools. And of course, we are celebrating the access or the enrollment, but we know that learning outcomes aren't improving as well, especially in government schools. Of course, again, there are not enough teachers. Teachers are absent, and of recent, we've had an ongoing industrial strike of teachers for about 4 weeks now. And so hoping they're resuming work this week or next week, depending on, when they are calling off the strike. So that has greatly impacted the education sector in Uganda, especially in government schools. So government has very limited resources, as you might all know. And so is less dedicated to education. And also, even when there's something dedicated to education, there are many competing priorities. But of course, the positive is the fact that the government has put in place different plans and policies that are very important, especially the education sector strategic plan, the teacher policy, and others. And as peace, we are actually concentrating on identifying some of the gaps within those plans and trying to support on some of the gaps that the government has already identified. And for us supporting on the gaps that government has already identified is very important, because that means there's alignment, a clear alignment with what the needs are in the government and their priorities, and our interventions also at the end of the day become more sustainable, because they are targeting key areas which have been already identified by the government, and we're supporting. And whether at some point we don't have enough resources, government can actually take up the activities or the areas we are supporting. I think the question here is, why is system strengthening important? System strengthening is our work, is a work where we intervene, we support schools outside our network, that is mainly the government secondary schools. Why is it important? It is really important because we know as peace, ensuring every child is in the peace school gets an education is not enough. But what is important is that we want every child in Uganda to get a secondary education that they deserve. And therefore, that's why our work of system strengthening is very important. But also, we are working hand in hand with the government to make sure that we drive the change at national level. And this is very important, because then we achieve the sustainability component of the program. So we are in the right position to support the system strengthening components of secondary education in Uganda, and this is because we have 14 years of experience in the education sector, in the secondary education sector. We are running the fastest secondary education school network in sub-Saharan Africa, which means we have the deep contextual knowledge and understanding and first-hand experience on how secondary education is run, what works and what doesn't work. So that is one of the reasons why we are better placed to support. We don't share with government just a knowledge, but we want to work alongside with the staff and the teams in government so that they're able to adopt our approaches, our best practices, and these are embedded in their daily practice so they become part and parcel of the system or the business as usual within the Ministry of Education and within the entire education sector in Uganda. So that means that tens and thousands of children in Uganda aren't just accessing secondary education, but they're actually able to complete that education with the skills and knowledge that will support and strive, help them thrive in the future, even after school. Our work with government, just to dive a little bit into our work with government. Our work with government began way back in 2019. We codenamed it Inspect and Improve. We call it Inspect and Improve. So the Inspect and Improve is meant to conduct a great inspection in secondary school, and then conduct the post-inspection support to make sure that schools are improving and providing quality education. So in collaboration with the government, with the Ministry of Education, we co-designed a project and piloted it in 10 low-performing government secondary schools. And after that, we were able to expand and scale up the project to about 50 schools. Again, adopting scaling up this project meant to implement best practices from our own experiences into government secondary schools. The evaluation of this project after a period of time indicated that there was very high successes around improving leadership, management, enrollment, students and teachers' attendance, teaching practices, and student safety and well-being all improved. That is all highlighted in the evaluation report. So since then, we have now rolled over the program into 200 government schools, accessing or reaching out over 128,000 students across the country, and these are students who are outside the PEACE network. Our aim is to negotiate. We are starting to talk to government at the moment, and the aim is to scale up the program again one more time to reach out to 350 schools to provide a proof of concept ahead of national rollout in terms of practices across the country. So that is what we have been doing in Uganda and in the sector of secondary education, trying to provide our expertise and trying to support government schools to perform better, especially before COVID and post-COVID. Thank you so much, Peter, and back to you. Thank you.
Henry, thank you very much, and thanks again for your incredible work, not only over the last year, 18 months, but over the 5 years you've been with us. So we're going to move now to questions, or in a minute. I just wanted to say before we did that, say a word about our new strategy. So we've just entered a new strategy period that will take us to 2026, and we've got 3 high-level goals for that strategy. One is to grow the PEACE school network. We want to double the number of children of students enrolled in our network over the coming few years, and also focus on closing the gender attainment gap within our network schools at the moment. The second goal is around strengthening education systems, and very much speaks to what Henry has just been describing in terms of working with government and the successful pilot that Beatrice referred to as well. So here we want to get to a point within the strategy period where we have had national level impact in our technical support to governments across the whole secondary education system in at least 2 countries of operation. I should say under the first goal, the network, we're also intending to expand to at least a 3rd country, if not a 4th. And the third goal is one around strengthening our organisation, and that really focuses on our financial footing, which is positive at the moment, but also on our operations, on people and culture, with a particular accent on diversity, equity and inclusion, where we really want to be market leaders over the coming years, and we have a lot of work to do there. So those are the 3 goals that really frame our strategy going forward over the next few years, and it's a really exciting time for us as an organisation. So thanks again to our 3 speakers, and thanks for putting yourselves on video. We have a few questions in the chat which I'll come to. I'd also invite anyone to put additional questions in the chat or to raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question verbally. Perhaps we'll go first to a couple of questions that have been in the chat and not yet answered. So there's a question from Titise. In Zambia, what would you say are the key factors that enable Peas to provide quality education at a lower cost compared to government schools? Beatrice, if you feel comfortable taking that would be great. I don't want to overload you because I know you've just joined the organisation. If not, Laura might want to pick it up. But Beatrice, there's a question that's very much for you from Libby around, as a new joiner, what attracted you to Peas and what you're most excited about for the year looking ahead. So maybe let's deal with those 2 questions first, and then we'll go on to others.
Great, thanks, Peter. I'm going to go and talk about why we're doing so well in Zambia, and then I'm going to hand over to Beatrice, who has joined the organisation recently, so has had fresh eyes when visiting the Peas school, so maybe you have some other insights to add to the data that I'm going to share. So our evidence is showing us that there's 4 key things that are leading to our better outcomes in Zambia. So the first is really strong school leadership and management in our Zambian schools. The second is better quality training for teachers, school-based training for teachers. And the third is higher child protection standards, which all lead to better outcomes for students. But in Zambia, what's particularly exciting is that we work in a very innovative partnership with government. And under that partnership, we're able to get higher levels of accountability and autonomy at the school level, and also give schools more options about how they spend their resources to help them become really financially sustainable. But I'm sure that Beatrice has some really interesting insights, having just done a grand tour of all of the Zambian schools as part of her induction. So I'll hand over to you, Beatrice.
Thank you very much, Laura. Of course, like you rightly said, we have those areas you've highlighted that make it very easy for us to provide quality education in Zambia. But I think I also want to mention that right now we have very good, political will, from the government. We just changed a new government, and then this new government has placed a lot of focus on education. So we want to leverage that kind of political will to be able to push some of our approaches that we are using right now in delivering quality education. We've seen a lot of willingness from the government to be able to allow us to work into, in government schools to try and upscale some of those models that we have. So that one is part of what I think is helping us to tick as an organization. Coming to the other question about why I was attracted to join Peas and how the year looks ahead for us. So like many of you might know, Zambia is not different from many other African countries where young girls face a lot of challenges in terms of accessing education. We have a number of them really falling pregnant when they are young or still very young. Some of them are married off when they're very young. So being part of Peas allows me to be part of this team that is committed to changing the story, particularly for the girl child in rural areas, and I'm glad to be part of Peas. Secondly, we are still very short of female leaders in the country. There are not so many women that are holding positions of influence, if you like. So joining Peas as a country director gives me an opportunity to give hope to that rural child that thinks that the opportunities are not going to amount to anything because of poverty and other challenges. So when they see me, they're able to see that there's hope for them to be able to become a leader as well in the future. Thank you.
Beatrice, thanks very much. And it's great to have that cockerel in the background, almost like a cheerleader behind you. Thank you. So we've got a couple of questions in the chat. Henry, could you take the question on school fees within Peas? And There's also a question about which next countries are we considering. Laura, I wonder if you can take that question. Julius, you had your hand up. Would you like to ask your question? And then we'll take those all together.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Julius. I work as the Director of Education School for Life. It's one of the organizations that manage schools. We are very good friends of peace schools. And so it's a very good opportunity for us to exchange ideas. Some of the schools are almost on the same road. We do run 3 schools currently, largely in the community areas along Michiana Road, and 1 high school. My quick question is that, one, I want to appreciate the strategy of strengthening component, because that helps quite a lot to realize that while we bring up girls, we also ensure that we also bring other children outside the peace schools, because inevitably the girls who come out of peace schools are going to be married from the boys who are coming from the other schools. So I think it's a very, very good strategy to ensure that the other schools are part of the whole plan. My question is, how do schools and organizations like us that are not necessarily government work with you to ensure that we can also be able to benefit from the peace products?
Julius, thank you very much. So let's address that question, and then we had the question on school fees and the question on peace next country. Henry, should we start off with you and then go to Laura?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Peter. I think the question was the average fees at peace, and the average fees for peace Uganda. For boarding, the average is 350,000 Uganda cedis. That is probably about 80 pounds, and slightly about $100 as well. So that's the boarding fees for students across the network. And then the day fees for day students is about 120,000 Uganda cedis. And again, that's about probably about $25. So sorry, pounds, 25 pounds, and then dollars about probably about $30. So that's the fees for the average fees for Peace Uganda.
Great, thanks. And then I'll jump in with the next question. I'll just add on that in Zambia, there are 0 school fees, which is great because then we can reach the poorest children. So in terms of our next countries for expansion, we are shortly going to be starting a project in northern Ghana. And we are also looking closely at Sierra Leone and Malawi as well, where we've had teams speaking with the government counterparts there who are really keen to partner with peace. So we're just looking at what models could work there to be in line with our 3 objectives of expanding equitable access to secondary education, making sure it's high quality, and being able to deliver that in a sustainable and cost-efficient manner. And then shall I just speak to Julius? Julius, really great to have you on the call. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate your collaborative approach. Definitely agree that there's really important for non-state school providers to collaborate and share with each other. I think one of the best ways of doing that is an exchange of personnel and actually visiting each other's schools. So it's great to have you as neighbours nearby. But also at Peas, we're really focused on strengthening at the system level. So all of our resources and materials are open source. We're very purposefully and intentionally sharing those with government to help support improvements in the government system, but also really happy to learn from and to share for other non-state partners. So looking forward to the rest of our conversations together.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks, Laura. And just looking at the chat, Leah from ENCO, thank you very much for reaching out, and we'd love to talk with you too. So maybe you can contact Laura after this, we can set that up. There's a question from Eleanor around how we link Peace secondary schools with primary feeder schools. I mean, we've had a very deliberate approach to this in partnership with USAID in Zambia, but Laura, I wonder, do you want to address that question?
Working with feeder primary schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in Zambia, we have an exciting new program where our secondary schools are supporting feeder primary schools, and we do that by exporting what we know works really well in the PEAS schools, which is a real focus on school leadership and management, in-school training for teachers and raising child protection standards. So we do that through supporting those primary schools to do a self-inspection, evaluation of their own schools, supporting them to develop school improvement plans, and then providing ongoing coaching and mentoring to those school leaders, and really connecting the network of schools in that area through things like WhatsApp to generate a cadre of school leaders at the primary level who are connected to our schools, who all really care about school improvement and improving student learning outcomes.
Laura, thank you very much. We're just into the last couple of minutes of the webinar. Any other questions from people? John, I wanted to acknowledge you. Thank you very much for your support, and great to see you'll be going out to the schools in the next couple of weeks. Thanks, John. Any other questions before we close? Question from Libby. It'd be great to hear from you, Peter, on what differentiates PEAS from other organisations running non-state schools. Thank you. So, yeah, I think there's really three things. One is that there's as a board member, there's a very specific set of metrics that we're really focused on, which is around the evidence we have that we reach lower income communities even than government schools. We provide greater learning gains than government and other comparator schools at equivalent or lower costs. So it's who we're reaching, the learning gains and the costs, and both in our direct delivery and as a model, and as developing the capability to support governments more broadly. To me, that is something really to be prized and of high value about PEAS, and one of the things that makes us exceptional. I think the second thing is our ambition to achieve impact beyond the direct operation of schools into supporting government systems more broadly. And I think the entry points and the already the impact we're having, particularly in Uganda, but also as we grow the Zambia program, is really exciting. And I hope that as we move into a third and potentially fourth country, we can have similar relationships with governments, which are very hard earned, to develop the credibility and the intellectual property to work with government schools to achieve much more impact at a larger scale than the direct operation of schools. The third thing I love about PEAS is I just think there is an extraordinary culture in the organisation of incredibly hardworking, committed people going an extra mile and delivering extraordinary impact. It's almost unique in my experience, and I don't know how we do it, but however we do it, I want us to do it going forward. There's one hand up, maybe we'll take as a last question before we close, and I thank people. Made Liambela, question.
Hello everyone. I'm a special education teacher here in Zambia, based at one of the public schools. I've been following the PEAS schools and the girls' education for quite some time now. And I'm curious to know, do you have any plans to venture into inclusion of disabled girls in your PEAS schools program? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know we've got some quite extraordinary data on our ability to reach disabled kids relative to other kids in the Uganda program. I'm less aware in Zambia, but Beatrice, I don't know if you have enough experience yet to pick up that question, and maybe Laura, you could supplement as well.
Yeah, but what I know thank you for that question. What I know now is that the government has, brought in the policy that all the children with special needs have to be, taught alongside the other children. So there's nothing like segregating like we had in the past, where you would have them probably, being taught elsewhere. But nowadays, the government encourages that all of them should be taken along. So that one requires that then probably capacity building must be provided to ensure that the teachers now are able to deliver, a quality education even to children living with these disabilities. So within PEACE, I think these are discussions that are, we are still open to be able to explore how best we can address, the issue of education for children requiring special needs. I think that would what I would say for now. Thanks. Unless Laura, you want to add on to that?
Thanks, Beatrice. I'd just say that this is an area that we need to kind of research more in Zambia. Our newer programme, our evidence, as Peter said, comes from our Uganda programme, where we can show, and the Girls Education Challenge evaluation also shows, that we're reaching more girls with disabilities and learning difficulties. But still, this isn't actually a huge number of children, because we're finding in our communities that those children with the most severe disabilities and learning needs are dropping out at the primary school level and not reaching secondary yet. So it's an area where we are proud of the work we do, proud of the training we provide to teachers to be able to diagnose and support children with learning needs in schools, but still something that there's more work to do.
Thanks, Beatrice. Thanks, Laura. We're beyond the scheduled stop, which was 1:45. I'm going to carry on if there are more questions, but do feel free to break off if you need to. We have a question from Ama Agbenu, please. Ama, you have your hand up. I think you're on mute if you're trying to speak. Maybe you could put your question in the chat. We can't hear you if you are trying. Julius, let's go back to you, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I put some questions in the chat, but probably they were not read. One of them was addressed to Beatrice. How do you support school leadership? Because you said one of the strategies used is you support school leaderships. I need to get some knowledge on how that is done, because it is important. That's my first question. The second question is, how do you prepare learners after secondary education? Because you say you have programs that, because after you finish the best of so far, you go up to senior 6. After that, what happens with the learners? And then the very last one I would want to know is the gaps from the government. How are you able to know which gaps the government schools have?
Beatrice, do you want to have a crack at that?
Yeah, I have Amos, our senior school network manager, in the discussion. Amos, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. I'll respond on how we support our school leadership across the network. We have deliberate programs that we use to support our school leadership. We have trainings that are conducted as part of the CPDs and also as part of the annual school leadership conference that we usually conduct. Then apart from that, we have the day-to-day support that we give to the school leaders that could be having challenges here and there. Then just to let you know is that at the beginning, after the school inspection, we identify 3 different areas that we wish the school to improve on, and we empower the school leadership to be able to come up with a school improvement plan. And through that, we provide coaching to them, and we sit with them, providing them with guidance and the support that they need throughout. So we are basically available for the school leaders, and we journey with them through the school operation, not taking over from their responsibility, but giving them tools, giving them the training, the support through coaching, so that at the end of it, they are better placed to manage this school. So we have different tools, we have different training packages that we are able to deliver to our school leadership. I think that's what I wanted to mention on. Then The other two questions, Beatrice can still, or Aurora can still answer them, or I can still provide addition to that.
You can continue, Amos.
Yeah, the other two questions, would you just remind me? Sorry,
So one was on support to learners post-school, if I understood correctly.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yes, so we have a number of skills that we are actually sharing with our learners whilst they're in school. Apart from supporting these learners with the academic pathway, we have a number of skills that we share with them. We have the life skills that we are sharing with them. We have certain vocational skills that we are able to support them through their subject lines, so that at the end of their high school or secondary school, they are better placed to actually engage the community. For instance, other life skills, we share with them on how they're supposed to set their goals, on how they're supposed to have positive self-image in such a way that even after school they should be able to approach, or they should be able to interact with people from different walks of life. Then at the moment, we're also working on what we call the entrepreneurship or livelihood skills that we are actually developing, so that our grade 12s are also subjected to the same. So that past grade 12 or past secondary school, they should be able to move on and be able to establish their own businesses or to look for employment. We know that finding employment is quite difficult just after grade 12. So we prepare them in such a way that they're able to either establish themselves or join their families to run their businesses, or be able to approach different situations past grade 12 that will enable them to survive, not only financially, but even just to survive from abuse or survive from any danger that might subject them to make wrong decisions, such as drug abuse and all that. So we prepare them adequately, not for just academic pathway, but we prepare them for the life, and they're able to live the responsible social life that empowers them to make rightful decisions and thrive in life.
Amos, thank you very much. Julius, did you have a third question? I'm trying to recall, forgive me, I don't. But was there a third part to your question?
Yeah, I think it was about to do with how how you identify the gaps in the schools, and I think he's tried to look at it. But I think at one time Henry talked about the issue of using the gaps from the government and being able to support the gaps as gotten from the government.
Do you mean gaps in terms of the physical location of where schools are?
Quality education.
The gaps in quality education.
Yes,
so Henry, how do we identify what the gaps are in quality education and help the government address them?
Yeah, because why I wanted to understand this is because Beatrice talked about some schools in Zambia that do not completely provide fees, do not pay fees. So my question was, then if it's not a question of paying fees, what other support do you provide now that those students in those schools don't provide fees, don't pay fees?
Okay, thank you. Henry, if we go to you first and then to Beatrice, and then I think we'll conclude as we're approaching 2 o'clock UK time.
Sure. So thanks, Julius, for the question. So there are two levels here. So there is the national level, and there is the school level. So at national level, as I mentioned earlier, we do look at the sector plans for the Ministry of Education or policies, and at the same time engage with the different departments at ministry. It could be secondary education, it could be gender unit in the ministry, it could be any other unit, any other department, and then discuss those gaps based on what is in their sector plans at the ministry level. And out of those discussions, we then zero down to what exactly we are going to support at national level. But the other side of gaps is the school level then. So the school level is basically based on inspections. So we do conduct inspections in those schools, and from the inspection reports, we are able to identify exactly what are the gaps at school level, and then design a school improvement plan, and we are able to support improvement based on a school improvement plan that is coming out of a school inspection report. Yeah.
Henry, thanks. Beatrice, over to you.
Thank you. So you might want to know that even before government, brought the free education policy, as Peas were already providing zero fees to the students, especially to the day students. And then for those that are accessing our boarding facilities, we had a very cheaper per pupil cost that we were using, which was really much lower than that for government. So right now as Peas, we feel that government is doing what we already started doing ourselves. So our support to the schools is really much broader than just the school fees. And like you have heard already, we do the actual construction. So we support infrastructure development, we construct the schools, and to be able to provide access to, to the students, especially in remote areas. Other than that, I think other speakers like Laura and Amos already spoke about the other kind of support we provide, the systems strengthening aspect, where we look at leadership, we build capacity of the teachers, and provide really several other support. So our support to schools really goes beyond the fees. So even right now, the government is giving free education. We still see our work very relevant because we provide a whole host of a package of support, if you like. Thank you.
Beatrice, thank you very much. And just looking at the chat, Anna and Amma, thank you very much for reaching out as well. I'm going to conclude us here, if that's okay, as we're just approaching the hour. A huge thank you to Henry, Beatrice and Laura. Really appreciate what you presented and answering the questions. Huge thank you to Emily and Lucy for helping set up the webinar, and a big thank you to all of you who have attended and participated today. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to collaborating with you going forward. So thank you very much, and have a good day all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.